exacerbated by the need for new infrastructure, along with technology, as you mentioned, that has not yet been proven. This proposed financial risks that are ultimately being taken on by taxpayers, which is us. So this is basically going to create energy poverty for our citizens. Businesses would definitely struggle, if you can imagine, which would lead to relocation. And like I said, if you can imagine paying like 4 to 5 times more for your energy. Nicole's going to touch on this a little bit. She did a lot of research. I mean, we know there's a lot of corruption going around this project, so she did some deep diving there.
So one of the things we hear quite a bit is, well, but I'm reading that the Sierra Club supports it and that the Audubon supports it. And I've donated to both of those organizations. I've donated to many of these organizations on this list. Maybe you have also. Regarding the Audubon Society, one of our board members actually was at an offshore wind symposium up in Sacramento a couple of years ago and heard somebody from the National Audubon Society speaking here. He is the director of the Clean Energy Initiative for the National Audubon Society, and he admitted to receiving over $12 million directly from offshore wind developers for a thermal imaging technology system to survey birds around wind installations. So what did we think that his research showed? Well, miraculously, it shows that it's not going to hurt birds and they're going to learn to go around now. So, interestingly enough, this man, his name is Gary George, was recently promoted to chairman of the board for Renewable Energy Wildlife Institute. That sounds really nice, okay, but what is it? It's funded by numerous energy corporations, many who profit from offshore wind, such as Ørsted, which is actually the biggest name in offshore wind. So there's all this money coming from people who will profit for Audubon and the others to speak in favor. The Sierra Club, which has a very loud megaphone, has taken hundreds of millions of dollars from organizations, nonprofits, philanthropic organizations like the Bloomberg Foundation, which are also invested in and are promoting companies that profit from offshore wind. The Sierra Club also has a lobbying arm, so a whole lot of that money goes right back into the coffers of the politicians who do what their funders want. Okay? One more example I'll go into that I'm familiar with is the National Resources Defense Council, or NRDC. Maybe some of you are familiar with them. They're based in New York. My sister worked for them many years ago, and at that point they were actually all about protecting nature and wildlife. Some of their big things is they had lawyers and they would sue polluters. They sued and they won against people who were polluting the Hudson River, for example. That was one of the big things. But now, nature and wildlife is actually their fourth goal, behind climate change, equity and justice, human health, and then comes nature and wildlife. So I was actually on their website today to kind of see what they had to say about nature and wildlife, which is their fourth priority. Oh, but that's actually really climate change, because even in that tab, they were prioritizing offshore wind development as a top goal, which I thought was fascinating. They didn't mention how that's helping the wildlife necessarily, directly. But interestingly enough, the goal after that was reducing ocean noise pollution, which is completely incompatible with developing offshore wind. So it's a little confusing. But anyways, just wanted to say that tremendous conflicts in these environmental agencies that many people trust. So that's exactly what Melissa said, they're greenwashing it. So just to be aware. And I encourage you to do your own research if you care about any or all of these organizations.
Yeah, so Nicole mentioned, right, a lot of this is, well, all of this disruption to the ocean and so forth is worth it because there's climate change, right? We have to hurry and rush because there's climate change happening. This is going to make some major difference. What's funny is that Bowen themselves have stated in several different ways that it's basically going to have no measurable influence on climate change. So what would the point be then, right? Like that's their point, their whole point. But yet they contradict themselves completely because it's not true. So something that's really important to understand is that offshore wind is very inefficient and very unreliable. It is only, like wind energy, wind's intermittent, right? The wind's not blowing all the time. So offshore wind is only going on about 40% of the time. And the grid needs fossil fuel generators ready to supply 100% of electricity needs. So that's what we have something called peaker plants where fossil fuels have to back it up, right? It's not windy, you have to be able to turn essentially a dial, if you could imagine, up all the way, which means that that energy needs to be available from fossil fuels 100% of the time. So this isn't going to shut down fossil fuel power plants, which is their entire excuse of why they're doing this, right? And again, keep in mind, these wind companies are oil and gas companies. So it's very mind-boggling, honestly, and it really highlights the contradiction of this entire thing, and again, just shows more of the dollar signs of what's really happening underneath, which is why it's important not to be greenwashed. They also stated overall, as anticipated, that there would be no collective impact on global warming as a result of offshore wind, including the proposed action. So what is the purpose of these projects other than filling the foreign countries' pockets and those who are being paid out to make these projects possible? And so I definitely ask you guys to consider what future you prefer with the irreversible changes that come with this project. There's a very stark contrast between sustainable conservation efforts and industrial interventions. If we continue being blind to what's truly happening, then this is what will happen here on our own town, in our own backyard. This is our home. Those behind these wind projects will get richer while our energy costs will literally skyrocket. Our community is industrialized. Some of our community members will lose their careers and their livelihood. Our oceans will literally be decimated. So I'm just going to read this for you. So in recognition of the critical role of a healthy ocean in sustaining life on Earth, it's essential to prioritize the protection and preservation of marine ecosystems. Any activities that threaten the balance of marine life can have far-reaching consequences, affecting not only marine species, but also human populations that rely on the ocean for resources and livelihoods. So the imperative to protect our marine ecosystems is greater than ever. I also want to be clear with you guys that even though they're starting to do the site survey, this is definitely not a done deal. That's why we're doing what we are doing. That's why we're legally fighting them. We're doing everything that we can. There are many other projects that have been canceled also that were projects that were supposed to be offshore that are getting canceled. So what's canceling them the most, I'd say, is the public being up in arms saying, we don't want this, right? We do not want this, and making our voices heard. So you and your friends and your family friends will help stop this with us. We just have to work together. And so again, we're REACTalliance. She gave you a QR code for our website. If you scroll to the bottom of our website, it's really easy to join our newsletter. It's really easy to join our newsletter on our website, and we would love you to. We'll keep you up to date on all the events and things that we have going on.